Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. As a parent, is this you? You feel overwhelmed. You're frustrated. You're wondering when your child is going to have the next big challenge, the meltdown, issues coming up. Are you kind of lost as a parent? Maybe you need to look at your boundaries as a parent, boundaries in life in general. We're going to talk about that today. And she's somebody that coaches parents through challenging situations all the time. Great to have her back with us. Dr. Michelle Alden is here on the program. How you doing today?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you back here. And this is boundaries, just for all of us, are so important. But a lot of times we don't put them up. Let's start. How do you define a boundary?
Well, I think that is a good place to start because we hear it a lot, right? Just like we tell kids respect, right? And then we kind of put them both together, respect and boundaries. And it's like, what does that really mean? What are we looking at? And for a lot of people, I think boundaries are like maybe just rules when it comes to kids. Like, these are my rules, instead of maybe that's more appropriate to say than these are my boundaries, because I think when we feel like somebody's like crossing our boundaries, really our boundaries are for us. Those are our lines, right? That's what we're willing to tolerate, what we're going to do if something happens that crosses that line. And that's different than a rule that's like for everybody. And so I think usually what I find is when we feel like people are not respecting our boundaries, maybe we don't really know what those boundaries are, and we haven't set that up. And sometimes it's really that our expectations weren't met rather than that a boundary was crossed. Like, the boundaries, if you think about a fence as a boundary or a line in the sand, like, it's pretty definite. It's like to go over a fence or through a fence or around a fence, like, that takes some effort on the other person's part. They have to know that it's there. And I think a lot of times with boundaries, it's not very clear. What are you talking about? What was the boundary that they crossed? And it's like, well, I don't know. I just don't feel like they respect me. It's like, okay,
Do you feel that many of us know what our boundaries are? At least we have them in our mind, but we don't adhere to it for many different reasons. For example, guilt, being a people pleaser, and we allow others to step over the boundaries, even though deep down in our mind, we know what they should be and how they should be respected. But it's kind of more on us many times for many different reasons. Well,
yeah, and that's why we're so angry.
Yeah,
about it.
We're really angry at ourselves.
Yeah, and it's, I think that this takes practice to like realize that when you feel like you've been a doormat or somebody's just using you, you have to take a step back and look at, wow, that's interesting. There was an expectation that I had that I didn't make clear. And then I just allowed that to happen. And so what can I do about that? And how can I make sure that doesn't happen again? Or is there any way to fix it now? Like when we agree to do something that we didn't want to do and then we're resentful for it. And there's a lot of parents that maybe feel that even towards their kids. And we don't want to say that. It's like, it sounds so terrible to say we are resentful at our kids, but that's not unusual. Then the guilt kicks in, I shouldn't feel this way, and all this resistance to it. But a lot of the work I do with parents is to help them to take a step back and look at, well, what's really happening here, and how can we, and sometimes it is in our thoughts. And there are times when we build that fence and then, somebody climbs over it or tears it down or,
I have a picture here that we allow people to step on us, i.e. over our boundaries, because of those many different reasons, be it guilt, even fear of abandonment. Like, there's so many different reasons we do it. And we're angry part of it is we're angry at ourselves, but the other part of it is we're angry at the other person because we think they should know better. Shouldn't you know better? You should be respecting me. But ultimately, we're responsible. We have to lay the hammer down or put the boundary down and make it very clear what our intentions are. And I believe we don't do that. Guilty as charged. It's very easy.
And when we don't do it, the funny thing is, or maybe not so funny actually, but the reality of it is then we end up kind of showing up to them in the same way that we don't want them to do to us.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how that works. And so and I do think that we want other people to just know how to treat us or
Right.
how to, do things. And I see this a lot with kids, like, oh, I've told them this before, or they know, but really there's a lack of clear communication about what the expectations are. And it doesn't take any more time it takes less time really than the battle that happens because both sides feel like, nobody's listening or no one's paying attention to what's, going on. And so I think that's a big part of it. I was thinking about this too, like in helping parents is we can say what the line is or what the boundary is or the limit, however you want to word it. I like limit a lot and expectations. And we can do that with kindness because we can do that before we're frustrated, before it happens. So like, let's say that your child wants to play a video game and you don't have a lot of time and that there's a meltdown when the time is up. And so our tendency is to not want them to do it, but then that's going to be a battle. And for a lot of families, that's not really realistic that they're just going to not have the screens. So we all have to learn how to do things within limits. Eventually, we have to learn that we have to go to sleep and turn off our phone or whatever it is, right? And so if you can say it ahead of time, even with really oppositional kids, you can say, I know you want to play the Xbox. We only have 20 minutes and then we're going to do this. Is that going to, a lot of times I'll ask kids, are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to be upset because 20 minutes isn't very long? Should we wait and use it another time? And so now you have their buy-in. I was like, no, I want to play it. I'll be fine. It's like, okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to set the timer. And a few minutes after the timer goes off is when you're going to have to turn off. So when the timer goes off, that's to let you know that you have to get to a stopping place. And then 5 minutes later, we're done. And again, letting them know, like, if that's the way it's going to be, that's how, and you can do that just as kindly. And what I see parents do sometimes is because they have all this resentment from all the times it didn't happen well, is they kind of go into it in a fight, right? Like, don't do what you did last time. And, you're always like this and, kind of this anger, but instead lead with that kindness and that empathy. I know it's going to be hard for you, but when that timer goes off, that's going to be your signal. Let's try it. Let's see how it goes. And I always kind of look at like every experience, even though you have information from prior experiences, you're still giving them the opportunity to do it differently. We all need that, right? An opportunity to do it better, do it differently.
And feel like you're in control. So now you're putting the ball in their court and you have 20 minutes now, or you could have 40 minutes when we get back from grandma's house. Hypothetical, whatever.
Yeah.
Your choice. But when your 20 minutes are up, timer's going to go off and that's it. And you have to be good with that. But I'm giving you the choice. Yeah. I think a lot of times we don't give our kids the choice. We forget about that because from prior situations, we just want to drop it down. This is the way it's going to be. And that is the way it should be. Do you think?
I think it's choices with limits, though. And I feel like, because I think that there are a lot of people that are trying to give choices. And so kids are making choices all day long and kind of these open choices and maybe some choices that we can take off of them so they don't have so much anxiety. But this choice about, you can do this, but do you want to have this time now, or would it be better to do it later? You're still going to have the battle, even if it's 20 or 40 minutes. And so the parameter is really set around that there's going to be a stopping time. And that's what we're looking at is when you reach that fence, when you reach that line, this is what my expectation is. Knowing that most kids are wired to go right to the line and still try to push it further.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that, but so that's where we have to be firm is now we said it and we can't say, well, okay, I change, don't have a fit. I'll give you 5 more minutes, or I'll give you this, or I'll give you that, because now we're allowing them to move that boundary. And if you've done that because you're trying to avoid the meltdown, you're going to have some point in time where that line is going to be the line. And then you're going to have to, that's where you have to hold that boundary. It's not about it's their job to kind of push it, in a way, and see if you're going to be the solid object in there.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole podcast in itself right there. How many times a parent hasn't followed through on be it a punishment or whatever it might be. When it comes to the boundaries, those feelings that we have where we don't put the boundary down, or we're just too flexible, wishy-washy, and it comes from things like guilt and other things. How do we battle those demons in our mind? Like I know he wants to play more in the video game. I'll just do it. I'll just bend. It's going to compromise me. I'm going to be running late, but I feel bad because he didn't get to play the video game because I had to work 2 jobs, et cetera, et cetera. How do you release things like guilt when it comes to the boundaries?
Yeah, I think it helps a lot if we're really clear kind of about what we're doing. So that's what I like. It's not that you're just saying you can't do something. We're saying we're going to stop because then we're going to do this next thing. That can help a lot with the parenting of it. The guilt piece and the things that our brain is telling us about it, that is the work that we have to do individually, right? And so when I'm coaching parents, I am talking to them about some of that. There's a lot of parent guilt, for the way things are in our world, the hustle and bustle of our lives, the fact that, their lives have had disruption, whatever it is, or maybe just that you're trying to be a better parent than you were parented,
Yes,
and so in trying to figure out what that is like I have a lot of compassion for parents because I know it's a hard thing. So I'm not, saying, you should be doing better. It's like, yeah, all this, and here's how we can do it. And I find that guilt really helps or like talking about it from that point can really help, because the guilt is in not knowing what to do sometimes. And when you have a plan and you can say, okay, well, it's, you have these other thoughts about why, and kids are really good at playing at that, right? Like, yesterday you said blah, 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 and bringing that in. But when you're really definite and clear about what the line is and what you need to do next, it helps a lot, because you're not just being mean. You're not just saying, you're saying yes, and we also have to do this.
Interesting thing you just said, Michelle, about us not really knowing. Like we haven't defined it in our mind what the goal is, what the boundary is. You think that happens a lot?
I do. I think it happens. And we don't, and sometimes we just don't know until we're in the moment. We're like, and I think this is part of our human nature. We know what we don't want. We don't want the screaming. We don't want the meltdown. We don't want them to behave badly at the grocery store, whatever it is. But we don't spend as much time thinking about how we want it to go and how we can help make it happen. How can I help my child to see that line and then honor it? And it starts with me seeing the line and honoring it.
it's challenging because what you said before is ringing so strong in my mind that we want to do it better than our parents did, not taking anything away from them. But there are things you might look at that, you know what, they were doing this and they were challenged by different situations and you want to do it better or because of guilt too. You know, I think the guilt thing is big. It just keeps coming back.
You have a lot of guilt, Steve.
I don't think I do.
Okay.
But I think it rings it for a lot of us because we're busy. We have so much going on in our lives. And also you want your child, you in your mind, you place that in a special place. I want my child to have a better childhood than I did in these different areas. And if you don't hit those marks, then you feel guilty that it didn't happen for whatever the reason is.
Yeah. And a lot of times the guilt is about our actual behavior, right? So it's like we feel guilty that we get frustrated,
Of course.
or that we yelled at our kid,
Of
or that
course.
we just ignored him.
Yep.
We don't usually feel guilty when we do something very proactive, or we don't feel guilty that we had this time for them to do their homework and then we helped them with their homework. It's usually it's like, I feel bad because every time I help them with their homework, I end up yelling at them or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I think that sometimes that those things, like over time, the times that we fail and the guilt that we feel from that can turn to shame. And then that's a real struggle, right? Because now I feel like I'm a bad parent. And now I'm fighting that resistance. Like, I don't want to be a bad parent, and I don't, it's like, okay, well, and I like to define those things with parents. Like, okay, well, what is a bad parent? Are you doing those things, and then what, rather than resisting that, it's like we're moving into it. So I feel like there's a lot of those misplaced feelings that we have, those reservations or the resentment or the guilt, the shame, is from not really just kind of dealing with what we have, even in our mistakes. I mean, like, learning to say, I'm sorry. I didn't want to yell at you, and I'm going to work on that, rather than I'm sorry I yelled at you, but you should have listened to me, and so we're modeling for our kids how to be humans, right? How to set their own boundaries, how to respect boundaries. We have to model all that. That's what I think one of the things.
Horrible responsibility.
Right?
It really is.
Yeah.
Like you hold the keys to their future of how they're going to interact with others. And, just talking about the guilt thing here, it's a cycle because you feel guilty of all the things that you just mentioned, and then you start to flex on the boundaries. And maybe you become an enabler to your child or children. And you're a softie where that's not the way it should have been. I should have been a little stronger about it. I feel guilty over here. And then you beat yourself up because I need to be a better parent. I need to, I shouldn't have let them off the hook that easy because they're not going to learn for the next time. So it's almost like, you're going around the merry-go-round all around again.
I think that the guilt, I'm going to push back on the guilt a little bit of being the reason why we don't set boundaries, because I think that that produces more guilt, right? Like when we don't hold the line, then we feel more guilty, right?
Yes.
But it still doesn't help us for the next time. If that's our thought. I think our thought is more in the moment, is that we don't want what's coming next, right? If I say it's, or maybe I'm enjoying the 20 minutes I'm getting of peace and quiet and I want 10 more, or whatever, and then we might feel guilty about that. But I think in the moment, what's driving our inability to say this is the line is not so much being driven, like, because if we were aware of the guilt, like, oh, I'm going to feel really bad about this later, I think that we would do it. But I think in the moment, we've kind of lost track of why we're doing it or what the purpose was. And I think sometimes because of what's happened in the past, we're dreading what's going to happen next on their side. The begging, the pleading, the crying, they're going to be mad at me, all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, maybe. And sometimes we can even just tell them, I know you're really focused on this right now. You need to get to a stopping place because in 5 minutes, it's getting turned off. So save where you're at because it's going to get turned off in 5 minutes.
Save where you're at. This is the things that you bring up are the things that we as parents may know and think of, but we don't act on it. And it's stuff that we bury in our mind because we don't deal with it, be it guilt or whatever it is. You bring it to the forefront. You're almost the mirror in front of us, making us realize what we're doing, why we're doing it. And again, it could go back to our childhood. We don't even realize that we're doing it until a conversation or some kind of coaching or counseling takes place. And we're just going to keep repeating it over and over again. Even what to say to your kids. Like you've said a few things just now and verbalized certain things that, I might steal,
Yes.
How to talk to your kids after a while. Sometimes you become lost because you're so deep into it and you're viewing it from a different angle.
Yeah. And we are in our families, like it's layered.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the hardest parts I think of in the work that I do with parents is helping them to see, like, we can't go into every situation, bringing everything that's happened before into the present, like, and so scripting it out a lot of times is what a coach does, just like a regular like basketball coach or whatever is going to tell you exactly how to hold your hands and where to have your body. Like there's a lot of parenting coaching that is the same way. Like when I'm coaching a parent, I'm telling them sometimes, okay, I want you to move in closer and I want you to lower your voice and I want you to but we need that. I mean, I wish I had that sometimes when I was parenting, even knowing this stuff, I was like, oh, I wish I had myself in my ear, better.
I'm right there with you. And I can even think back to situations, and it could be 5 years ago, 7 years ago, where I might have gotten frustrated, snapped a little bit. I know when they were. I see one in my mind right now, and I'm like, how did I let that happen? But it was just, not to give excuses, but, working a lot of jobs, a lot of stress, a lot of things going on. And then, you verbally snap and you shouldn't have. But it happens. So I guess we have to cut ourselves a little bit of grace and slack there. We never got deeper into mentioning your book that you have available. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids, Build a Bridge to Better Behavior. And people can get it on Amazon. It lays out some of these things that we've been talking about, and it gives parents like practical things that they can do.
Sure.
And tools that they can use. There's also a couple of places where they can download things from the book. They can ask for a download of. I have one chart that is just the structure and what you can do when your child's doing this, and so there's just I'm really about giving parents practical things that they can do, because I feel like a lot of parents that have challenging kids have had a lot of therapy, the kids, sometimes the parents, and they have really a pretty good understanding of why their child is acting that way. Not why, like in the moment they're like, why are you acting like this? But they have a base of understanding of things, I think, that for the most part, but they need to know what to do about it.
Yep.
And we all do. It's just like you said about, having those times when we look back and remember when we totally lost it, with somebody or our kids. But we're also human, and being able to know how to say we're sorry and to move on, and teaching our kids how to do that, because they're gonna have their moments too. Yeah. And do they know how to repair? Do they know how to set boundaries? Do they know how to do this?
What would you say is so impactful in our society? Because we get in our car, what do? GPS. We don't know where we're going. GPS is telling us. It's giving us the step-by-step directions. Go on to Amazon. It's been so easy. Click a button. That's it. I don't have to do anything. And I believe that's where the value of that book comes in, because it shows exactly in real-world examples and advice and tools what to do, because we don't know what to do. Nor do we have time to dig deep into finding the answer. I need the answer now. And it's all there. What's your website where we can find more about the book, about you, about coaching?
Yeah, so parentingchallengingkids.com. And right from the website on the Get Started page, people can set up a 30-minute consult with me for free, or they can just, look around and, they can go to the YouTube channel, which is also Parenting Challenging Kids, and watch more videos. So they feel like, a lot of people want to kind of feel like they know you before they call you.
Definitely. Oh,
so,
before I go to a doctor, I know everything about them. I feel I've already seen them.
Yeah.
Just to your point. Check out the website, parentingchallengingkids.com. There's help. There's help. You're not alone if you're one of those parents and feel you need boundaries and you're frustrated. Thank you, Michelle, for today. A lot of insight, a lot of reflection, and understanding why we do what we do, but also how to undo what we do. And I appreciate that. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.